Brelsford from SMB Nation. It's April 10th, and we're still here. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Everyone was a little concerned about April 8th and what was going to happen on April 9th. So what do you know? We're still here, and more importantly, there's a huge opportunity moving forward. You are attending the Life After April 8th webinar, the long tail of Windows XP and the Office 2003 opportunity. Now, let me just take a moment up front to tell you what I've done. I've been involved in this project for a year, since last May, in various capacities. So it went pretty quick. It's now April. We'll call that a year. It's been a good ride, and we've learned a lot along the way, which I'm going to communicate to you today. What I'm not going to communicate is the same old deck. So many of you on this call have attended some prior XP migration webinars and even gone to my workshop, and you're familiar with my traditional deck, and that's actually archived up at smbnation.com under webinars. So I want to encourage you, if you need that level set, if you need that baseline information, to go to smbnation.com and go to webinars and watch the other XP migration webinars, because I kind of want to invest forward. I kind of want to move forward, and we all know a lot of the talking points. I kind of have one summary slide in a moment that kind of honors the past, but today is really about moving forward. So let's get going. For those of you that don't know me, again, Harry Brelsford, the founder of SMB Nation, best known for a bunch of books on Small Business Server and SMB IT Pro business opportunities, I guess I call it. And I've taught at the local university and speak at conferences, and like many of you, got certified back in the day on various products. If you're not familiar with SMB Nation, we're a community, and I've recently had to kind of work on my elevator pitch about what is SMB Nation. And here's kind of where I've been able to drive the point home quickly, is that we're often compared to Spiceworks, and Spiceworks is a large community of IT pro enthusiasts, and they typically are in-house IT pros, so everybody from the Dilbert cubicle dweller up through IT management. They don't have as strong a message in SMB, and they don't have as strong a message in the channel or the reseller channel or the consulting channel. And I think that's where we work very nicely with them. So you can kind of think of us as the other Spiceworks, and then I'll leave on this that we definitely tapped a vein over the last 16 years, 14 years as SMB Nation, with the small business server community. And I kind of compare that to the excitement you saw with the Macintosh back in the mid-80s to, we'll call it the mid-90s. So good, very good time. We're on a webinar, and I can appreciate that you might have a browser open on screen number 2, and if you have that browser open and you want to watch a funny video while I'm kind of teeing up the conversation, go to xpmigrations.com and look at the video that we produced with Bigger Brains about the expiration of Windows XP, and enjoy a good laugh. Okay, so let me tell you what I've been doing. I already alluded to the last year I've been focused on the XP migration opportunity in various capacities, including helping Microsoft OEM and right now on a worldwide tour. This last 30 days, my company, 3 trainers, we traveled over 68,000 miles in 30 days as sort of a final push. We compare it to Election Day. So April 8th was Election Day, and we were out to get out the vote. Personally, I almost hit 43,000 miles in 3 weeks. Fortunately, I'm home on Bainbridge Island and can put my sandals on and rest. But what I want to emphasize is maybe to help motivate you to take advantage of the opportunity. That I love the phrase, the person who says it cannot be done should not interrupt the person doing it. So I'm pretty interested in having you guys find your inner XP migration rage after this webinar and go after the good business. What we do on the worldwide tour, and I realize this is a webinar, our worldwide tour is an executive briefing format. It's the 15 top resellers per country, and so it's not a broad event. It's actually more like an executive MBA Saturday session, and we treat it like that, and I just love it. I love the format. So we go around the room and we have everybody talk about maybe some of the hurdles that they're hitting in terms of clients that won't get to the modern technology. And we've heard it all, but I'll share one interesting tidbit with you that down in Brazil about 3 weeks ago in Sao Paulo, one of the attendees, well, all of the attendees were saying their biggest challenge is licensing, and that's because of the high rate of piracy. And when you think about it, if you were being naughty and using pirated Windows XP, and you were going to a technology that's going to be much more difficult to pirate, then wouldn't you forego upgrading? I mean, it makes perfect sense. Why would you upgrade? So that's the challenge they have there. I don't think we have the same challenge in a developed country like the U.S., but again, I just wanted to give you the context of what we're hearing out there. And if this were our executive briefing, we would take a little time to go around the room and have each of you share a customer story. Disruptions. So this part you've heard me talk about, quite frankly, over the last year, that disruptions create opportunities. On the weekly webinar, I tell you, I always run CNBC in the background, and it's not because I'm a big stock investor, but it kind of helps facilitate my attention deficit disorder while working, to have something busy going on in the background. But more importantly, the economic conversations that go on CNBC are very encouraging to me. And so what I would tell you is, first of all, you make money when there's disruptions in the marketplace, or if you're causing the disruption. So think of Amazon.com and what they did to retail. Think of Uber and what they've done to taxis and the traditional regulated transportation environment. And you want to be that person. I would encourage you to think anew about that you want to be that person and capitalize on disruptions, capitalize on chaos, because then, by golly, you'll be on CNBC. I mean, that's where the next fortunes are being made. So, the rest of the slide is pretty self-explanatory, but disruptions are a constant theme over the last year about XP migrations. Clearly, with some of the, well, let me take them one by one. So the hardware, Ultrabook with the long battery life, touchscreen, check. New technologies, so the Action Tech Screen Beam Pro with the Miracast standard to output wireless to display, check. I use it for the lecture, unbelievable of an educational environment. Services, check. Yesterday at the Channel Pro SMB Forum in LA, about 100 attendees, if I had to guess. I had a lot of conversations where clearly everybody's pivoting with this disruption to be little mini business advisors, little mini MBAs. That's how they're making their money after the baseline technology is done. And then finally, the training opportunity, something we always forget. We always leave money on the table by not doing the training. And what I'll tell you is I've invested in training in my own company. We recently converted from Salesforce over to Dynamics 2013 CRM Online. And with the training, we have made that an essential part of the conversion, because if we're going to invest all this money in new technology, we need the staff to know how to use it. All right, here's an older slide on market share for September 2013, and this is an older slide, and I left it, and here's why I left it, is the September 2013, the high water mark was 31.42% for XP. Yesterday at the SMB Forum in LA, Howard Cohen, a well-respected columnist for Redmond Channel Partner Magazine and also a CompTIA presenter, his research is showing around 28% worldwide. I had a good dialogue during my keynote with Howard about that. That's a little high. I'm not hearing 28%. The numbers do vary. Your mileage will vary, so there's a lot of different numbers being thrown around. But here's what I heard on our swing around the world, is that you're seeing it vary from the lower teens in some countries like Australia, and New Zealand claimed it was up in the 20s, and the UK claimed it was up in the 20s. So it's all local. Like politics, all XP migrations are local, and the rate will vary. And I want to show you a slide that kind of shows that state by state. So this is an updated slide from NeoWin, some research they released yesterday that shows the USA Windows XP usage. So if you live in the Midwest, or quite frankly the East Coast, you're in a good way. Out in Seattle, I would expect it to be lower at 5%. The home of Microsoft, my home state of Alaska, just a little bit higher. You know, Alaska's surprisingly sophisticated with the oil industry. And look at how that also maps to North Dakota, where they have the thriving oil industry with a low number. They do know how to make capital investments in the oil industry. So you're going to get the deck, by the way, after this presentation. But I did want to highlight that if you're in Ohio, you're looking good. If you're down Indianapolis, where we had our first SMB Nation, would be great. The Upper East Coast, Rhode Island, Connecticut would be fantastic. And Tennessee, the home of Robin Robbins. By the way, it's Robin Robbins' birthday today, so drop her a note up on Facebook. The industry was slow to react. This has kind of been extremely frustrating to me. That last May, when I jumped on the XP project for Microsoft OEM and on my own accord and started xpmigrations.com, smart minds, very smart minds, smarter minds than myself. I sat in rooms and had meetings, and smart minds thought that we would have a land rush to the XP migration starting last summer. We did a lot of evangelical outreach. I did a 44-city tour with Lenovo. Myself and the trainers, we did that over the fall, and it just didn't come to pass. It was, everybody's late to the game. So what I'm getting at today is that the opportunity is actually starting today, April 10th, or yesterday, April 9th. The migrations are now commencing. And let me tell you, we had econometric models and spreadsheets and everything that said it was going to be an amazing fourth quarter and first quarter. Now we're into the second quarter by a couple of days, and that's where it's going to start to happen. And here's an example. I do know the OEMs intimately, and you know, some of the stuff it's not appropriate to share their their business plans with you, but I can tell you this, that HP was not aggressively promoting the XP migration theme last fall and even in Q1. But check out this ad. This was an ad over on NeoWin that just went up yesterday. And so they are now jumping into the game post-deadline. And I applaud. I mean, it's actually, in hindsight, that's pretty smart. But they're jumping into the game post-deadline with their XP messaging. And bottom line is, it should be encouraging to you. Now that we're seeing the industry start to react, that's good for you. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to review the pillar messages. This is, I've done this webinar. If you join late, this is an updated deck, so I'm not going through the 2-hour and 4-hour version of XP migrations. You can find the traditional deck over at you can find the traditional deck at smbnation.com under webinars. But the pillar messages that you know all too well are security risk. Who hasn't heard about the security risk in running XP after the end of support? The compatibility issues, so you can't run Office 2013 on Windows XP. You also have a situation where you might have to have a machine in isolation to run legacy applications. Every CPA I bump into says, how can I get to my data from Mass 90 and Peachtree and some of the older accounting systems? And the best we came up with was to run that in isolation, so you can still get to the archive accounting data. Productivity, you'll see in my other webinar, there's a study from Anurag at Tech Isle on older machines cost more to maintain. Bottom line is, older machines run slower for a lot of reasons. And if you value your time per hour, you value your staff time per hour. I mean, think about it. If I have my staff of 10 people rebooting once a day, let's call it a 15-minute cycle, and multiply that by 250 days a year, that's not cool. that's costing me real money. There's compliance issues with HIPAA and PCI. Again, I go into that in a little more detail with the other deck. And the financial issues surrounding using a Section 179 tax credit that has been reduced as of January 1st. Unfortunately, that tax is actually a deduction, but the upfront deduction went from $500,000 that qualified down to $25,000, a 95% reduction. But you still would want to educate yourself on a Section 179 to talk authoritatively to your small business customers to not have to capitalize the full cost of the migration and the buy, and then custom support. So we're going to talk about custom support. This is what's getting news. So you may have seen early in the week there were articles April 7th and April 8th that the United Kingdom had paid Microsoft King's ransom to provide additional XP support for another year. And I think there's another country or two that did it. There was a joke up on Facebook that a couple of our people would move to the UK. I mean, that's hardcore if you're going to adjust your business model that dramatically to get XP support for another year. But bottom line is it's custom support incidents. Where this is all coming from, and I'm sure the UK negotiated with Microsoft, let's suggest a better rate. But on the surface, it's a custom support option at $200 a device. And so here's how this works. And there was some confusion last fall. I even created a little of the confusion. Now I can clarify it. At one point I was told it was $200 an incident. That's not true. It's $200 a PC annually. So if you're my friend at Avanade in Detroit working on a 10,000 unit conversion for XP, good friend of mine, 10,000 times 200 is a very large number, and that's what that number would be. So that would be a lot of money if they miss the deadline, and it's for the fleet of PCs in the organization. You know what this sounds a lot like, you guys, is it sounds a lot like the way we treat enterprise agreements or EA licensing. So that's not only an update, a slight correction for you, but it also shows you where the extended support, the custom support is coming from. And I have always argued, and I get pushback, why would you invest backwards? Typically as an investor, you don't buy a company to heal its balance sheet to then move the company forward and innovate. You typically invest forward. So I stand by my position about the need to migrate off of XP and not invest backwards and invest forward. And we can talk ad nauseum about that. Let's talk about some of the objections. By the way, this webinar will probably be closer to 30 minutes than 60 minutes. Just wanted to give you a quick update, get the deck out to you, and get you selling. So let's plow along. A new slide. Overcoming objections. Number one, migrations are too disruptive. Yes, they are. They cause chaos in an organization. People quit. People retire. If you think of mainframe conversions inside other companies, people submit their retirement papers at the bank saying, I'm not going through another conversion. And I've actually seen that. So they are disruptive. Now, again, that's actually an asset for you because you can capitalize on the disruption, make money, and it puts everything in play, folks. It puts in play the phone system. So what are we going to do with the Nortel PBX system now that we have a migration going on? Do we want to go to some kind of unified communications solution? We use Vocalocity. I'm not seeing huge uptick in Link down in the small business space. But you get the point that everything's in play, and that tends to be where capital investments and money is spent, is when you basically have the disruption of a migration. Number two, that quite frankly should be number one, my old PC works well enough, okay? On the left, you're seeing the results of that productivity study by Anurag at Tech Isle, and that's basically what he's getting at. Older PCs cost more to run. But this should probably be the #1 objection, is that it works well enough. Well, I got news for you. At the end, I'm going to hint the next wave of migrations concerns Server 2003 and the deadline. We're going to hear it again. People who are on SBS 2003, people who are on XP, they're happy. It works well enough. You're going to have to educate the customer on, all the reasons, security, productivity, and compliance and everything about migrating off of XP, but you will bump into this one. It's a tough one with the small business owner. I get it. I prefer my old OS. I already have Windows 7. Why do I need Windows 8 Pro? It's not quite the right title for that slide, but basically the argument I want to frame is 7 versus 8. I'm using 8. I'm using 8.1. I haven't installed the 8.11 yet. Been a little busy. I'll do that over the weekend and blog it. But I like 8. I have a touch device from Lenovo, and I have the Twist laptop. I'm addicted, and touch with 8 is great, and it's all the benefits of a newer operating system and so on. Plus, it supports Miracast. So for those of you out there with 8.1, if you want to do the Windows K key right now, Windows K, and pick Project, and you'll see that you can add a wireless display in Windows 8.1. So that's good enough for me, but I'm willing, more than willing to acknowledge most people are still leaning towards Windows 7. We have a couple surprise guests on this webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about what they're hearing out there as to, where people are going. We can all agree to leave XP, no argument there. The question becomes, where do we go? Exceptions to the rule, quickly, anti-malware support. So Windows XP, Microsoft itself created a little bit of confusion back when they had an announcement that they were extending the engine support. The malware engine support was being extended until mid-year 2015, so July of 15, and that confused the marketplace. To be honest, I'll go on record and say I wish they hadn't communicated it the way they did, because what happened is the community heard that the Windows XP deadline had been extended roughly another 15 months until July of 15, and that's absolutely not true. This is a very small area of the pillar messaging. It concerns security, and it concerns one part of security. And so, if you hold up your hand with 5 fingers and wiggle your pinky, well, I don't know, security, use your index finger. Wiggle your index finger. That's security out of the 5 pillar messages, and it's one part of your index finger. So I've had to do a lot of communication to reset the community on understanding that. The other thing, when you get the deck, I'd encourage you to Google this, is if you're working with government agencies with kiosk or retail stores with point of sale, Windows embedded products have their own distinct support life cycles. So this is an update from our fall show to better communicate this. So those dates range from 16 to 19. That depends on the SKU. Clearly don't have time to go into that here. That should probably be a webinar into itself, but this primarily concerns kiosk and point of sale and healthcare with the Windows embedded products. Had a big conversation right here yesterday in LA in my keynote with a couple of people in the audience who know what they're talking about, and they were updated by this information. Key point in any migration is an assessment tool. So we worked with Rapid Fire Tools to develop an assessment tool. If you want to go grab it, it's free. It's at xpmigrations.com. That's one of our brands. So go to xpmigrations.com and select the Join Me page, join us, and go ahead and use this tool for discovery, because let me tell you, we're doing some XP migration work, and every time we don't do an assessment, every time we don't do a discovery, and that's rare, but we're reminded why you do an assessment discovery. And I would encourage you to kind of have a conversation amongst yourselves as to whether the assessments should be for free as part of your sales call, or should it be for a fee. And that's the ongoing debate in the industry, is fee or free for an assessment. With the XP realm, most of us are landing at free and make it part of your biz dev so then you can bid the work. So again, xpmigrations.com, and then go to the Join Us page. So let's bring in Neil and Thomas from LapLink with their PC Mover product. These are my surprise guests, longtime industry veterans. Neil, I actually wrote about your product quite a while ago when I migrated an XP machine when Windows 7 first came out, and wrote an article about it. We used my teenage son's, he was 18, so he would have been a teenager, but we basically migrated his gaming machine, and number one, it worked, and number two, I figured there's no tougher test than a teenager's gaming machine to see if a tool works. So Neil, Thomas, welcome aboard. Gentlemen, what is your story?
Well, thanks, Harry. We appreciate it being part of your webinar. You know, it's a very interesting time, and I think you hit it right on the head. The industry has been very late to react, and when you said that migration is, you know, one of the number one objection, that is actually proven by several studies that Intel and Microsoft have been doing. But somehow, you know, Microsoft, over their long-term planning, really didn't believe that migration is an issue. And they always had a transfer tool, this Windows Easy Transfer that you see on the slide, in Windows itself, but they dropped it in the latest versions of Windows, which means they took that tool away that is the number one objection to customers. And so when they started to realize that there are a lot of XP users, you know, they were hard pressed not to have a tool, and so they turned to us, you know, just in the last month. We have been doing migrations for 30 years. You know, perhaps with DOS it was, you know, very easy. With Windows, very difficult. So our product, PC Mover, works for consumers, for businesses, even the largest enterprises where they do worldwide rollout. And just to add, the last one point is, when you show these numbers about XP, we have to realize that the small business and business use of XP is much higher because the consumer is much lower than the average. So to have a migration solution is very important, and that's why Microsoft just licensed PC Mover to give out to consumer in a reduced XP version, and recommended us as the Microsoft migration solution for the marketplace.
And Thomas, where would people find the complementary PC Mover that replaced Windows Easy Transfer?
It is on Microsoft. It is on Microsoft.com. We can, you know, provide the link, and perhaps you can provide it to the to the users later. But it's on Microsoft.com. When you can just Google or Bing, you know, Microsoft free tool for XP migration. You will find it. You can download a tool that will do data and settings only, only from XP to Windows 7 and Windows 8 and 8.1. We, of course, will provide more solutions with our PC Mover Professional for everybody, PC Mover Business for business users, and, of course, PC Mover Enterprise for enterprise users. So it is a platform that is extremely variable, very flexible, and it saves you a ton of money. We believe a minimum of $300 in labor costs per PC deployment.
Absolutely. And by the way, Thomas, I want to have a little fun with you. Tip of the hat to saying Bing. A lot of people may not know LapLink is a well-respected 30-year-old company, and I've Oh, good Lord, I've used you in a lot of different realms, Macintosh days and DOS days and so on. So, but you're Seattle-based, and it wasn't lost on me you said Bing, and folks, that's a Seattle thing. So, and hey, Thomas, quick question before I have you address this slide. I know, ironically, we live in Seattle, but for some reason I typically only see you live at WPC. And will you be, or will your staff be at the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Conference in mid-July in Washington, D.C. this year?
I believe so. I mean, as you perhaps can see from the slide, the need for migration has picked up dramatically. These are basically numbers of migrations that we support, and basically from April on, it nearly tripled. In effective migration, and that is not only consumer, that is actually a lot of small business and a lot of enterprises that need to move. Now, you know, sometimes it's very surprising. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised about the news about all the banks paying so much money for Microsoft. It's a little bit like, oh yeah, the year 2000 is coming. Perhaps it's not coming. Yeah, I mean, you know, it is an old operating system, 13 years old, and I can't understand why an IT department would take that long. Okay, for us it's now very good. We see a strong increase, and certainly we also see a big increase because Microsoft now fully endorsed us instead of you know, trying to do it themselves.
Cool. Well, let's move on. So Thomas, let's talk about this slide. Why you need to migrate, and it looks like the cost associated with it, sir.
Well, I mean, this is, of course, you know, a sentence we picked up from IDC, where, you know, they proved that the annual maintenance cost for XP is so much higher. You already talked about all the, you know, reboots you have to do. You have to, you know, perhaps do much more, you know, updates to it. And you know, IDC thinks that it will even increase because now you also have to deal with perhaps security issues. And again, you already mentioned it, Microsoft confused the market a little bit with extending the support for antivirus. But we have to clearly say to the customers, and we have to understand very clearly, that the security issues have nothing to do with viruses. Yes, there can be viruses coming in, but the biggest security threat is actually the security holes of Windows XP themselves. And when Microsoft will patch some of the Windows 7 security holes, all the bad guys will look at exactly what they are doing to Windows 7, because they know that the same security hole in the same architecture will exist in XP, which is not patched. So you have to spend probably even more money and even beyond the $200 for Microsoft, you know, to be on the safe side. Windows 7 has proven to be much more economic feasible, and it costs much less to maintain. And so really, there's no reason to stay with XP, you know, and have a very slow system for your workers.
There you have it. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you, and feel free to stay on the line, Thomas. I'm going to go ahead and move ahead into some of the final slides. So hang in there, folks. We're going to talk about moneymakers, and a couple of you who have attended a past webinar or my workshops or the executive briefings would recognize this conversation. Now, let me tell you how the conversation's changed. Instead of me talking at you, although it is a webinar and I'm in fact talking at you, but my intent in the live format is again to treat this like an executive MBA session on a Saturday. And you know, people who have a little more experience and went back to grad school and so on. And these two slides take 30 minutes because we go around the room and we have some really good dialogue. And so here's where we landed worldwide on the last round of activity. Is that, first of all, in a financial model or an economic model, you have to make assumptions. So pretty quickly, we can agree that we're going to go with one migration per month and that there's 12 months in a year. So let's make those assumptions so we can move forward. Then the question becomes the customer size and the number of endpoints. And I share with the audience that the standard small business server installation, which is kind of the, the heart of our community, is 15 endpoints worldwide. It was, and is a great era. However, not all 15 endpoints are Windows XP. I mean, if you think about how a small business operates, you think about my business, well, I guess, I'm the CEO and the founder, so I get the new machine, and then I pass down my old machine to a staffer, who I hope they're not on the phone or the webinar hearing that, but that's kind of how it works, and I'm a geek, and I kind of need to be current, so there's reasons to do that. So what happens is I don't think I have any XP left in my own company, thank goodness. I think we finally got rid of those with the callers, so we're all on Windows 7 and some of us on Windows 8, but you get the point. So in an organization, it's not all XP. That's not going to happen. So what's the number of endpoints? So to keep the math simple, we said 10. And that's not an unrealistic number. That you're going to have those customers. A credit bureau in the Bay Area that we advised had 50 XP machines, and they had some serious PCI compliance issues. And then you're going to have the onesie-twosies. A law firm we're working on right now, a lawyer in Detroit, that's a onesie. So it all averages out to 10. So if we do the math, that's 120 endpoints converted per year. We get down to the bottom bullet point, and the conversation again gets a little bit of elevated. And Thomas, maybe we'll call you back. I mean, I think you alluded to, if I missed it, forgive me, but what are you seeing? What maybe factually or your opinion? What's the service revenue opportunity for a migration? At a single endpoint?
Well, I mean, if you don't do any automated tools, the endpoint migration revenue opportunity is very tricky because if you have to spend hours and hours of reinstalling all the applications, you can't charge your customer $1,500 or $2,000 for the job. That means you might have to do it for the customer and lose money. So with automated tools like PC Mover, we see that, first of all, we can save $300 minimum for a migration, and if it's not in a headquarter, it's in field office, it might even go up to $1,500 in savings. So for a service provider, they can charge a very good margin and still save the company time and money, because a lot of these migrations will take a long time if they have to be done manually. So with PC Mover, it is very easy, and it creates much more margin.
Exactly. And so, by the way, I'll interject a separate conversation. In the near future, we're going to have a webinar on Office 365, and there's a very specific Exchange email tool for migrations from Exchange on-prem to Exchange in 365, and it migrates public folders. It's called Skykick, another Seattle company. You'll be hearing about them more in the near future. But Thomas, very similar line of reasoning is that you can use this automated tool to perform the work, and they suggest you can go to a fixed bid. So you could say, Mr. Customer, $300, and I'll do the work, and maybe because of automation, you're able to implicitly do the work for $100, and I'm probably oversimplifying it, but you have a margin, and the customer is happy. I mean, if you're upfront, manage expectations, it's a little bit like our CRM conversion, where we used a Microsoft partner called Fine Associates out of Seattle, and they bid a flat fee, and I said, fine, here's your check, do it. They did it. I don't know what tools they used. I don't know how quick they did it. They may have done it over a Saturday, Sunday, and made very good money. I don't care. It worked. And CRM is a critical line of business app for us. So that's kind of some of the reasoning. Well, folks, let me tell you where we landed. We landed at $300 per endpoint. Microsoft has studies out, and in their keynote at WPC last year in Houston, they said it was $200 per endpoint, but is I talk across different currencies around the world, so the pound sterling in the UK all the way down to the real down in Brazil. It basically equated to about $300 US with all the currency conversions and hours of conversations. So we're going to go with that. So I have 120 endpoints at $300 service revenue per endpoint. That creates a total direct revenue opportunity of $36,000. So let's talk about what that means. Well, your annual income, according to our salary surveys over 7 years, is an SMB IT Pro, and this is validated by Redmond Channel Partner Survey and Redmond Magazine Survey. We all, and they're our friends, we all kind of come in the high 5 figures, low 6 figures, and it's just been that way forever. You guys are making $100,000 a year, and that's a handsome income. I mean, that's a nice life, and you're doing what you like to do. So congratulations. So 36,000 on top of 100,000 is a 36% increase. Now what I can't do is tell you that you're going to be, you know, the next multi-billion-dollar buyout from one of the big players up on CNBC. You're not going to be a 36-month millionaire. You're not going to double your MSP revenue in 12 months. We're not here to have that conversation at all. What I can tell you is this. Let me put it in a different construct. My son is 18. His number 2 choice for college, he's waiting on number 1, but number 2 is in the bag. It's Cal Poly down in San Luis Obispo. It's $36,000 a year, and that's actually cheap. I mean, we're really happy with that choice, and that's cheap. I need $36,000 a year to pay for my son's tuition. Here's how you get it, and I think by offering that realistic point of view, hopefully you get it on the webinar that there's some real money here, and we're an aging demographic. Maybe you could use another $36,000 over the next year. The final point that I'm not really going to go too much into is the attach rate. So what additional work can you get anytime you set foot in a customer site? You know, the XP migration thing could be the door opener and the door stop. So how much more can you make by having a conversation about unified communications and telephony and VoIP? And that's where the numbers get very interesting, that we have the disruption of a migration. You're going into the customer site, you add a second monitor, you add the Action Tech ScreenBeam Miracast device, you start having all these attaches, and you make some real money, if that makes sense. So let's move on. Time is passing quickly. We have a duration conversation. The fixed deadline was, look at that, I need to update my deck. The fixed deadline was April 8th, anti-malware we talked about, and we talked about embedded XP. I would offer the long tail as 24 months. If you took that map of the U.S. and you took my entire body of knowledge and you capitalized on the disruption of the XP migrations, you could get a 2-year run. And then it gets even cooler because the Server 03 deadline is right around the corner. So our story is going to start to change July 1st, and we're going to go do this all over again for Server 03, including SBS 2003. And you have a year from July to the following July for its end of support. There's a lot of 03 out there because those were put in place when the economy was good. And it's going to have yet another 24-month long tail. So guys, we're sitting here in 14, Q2 of 14, and we're talking about a business model that will take you out to mid-2017 if you get motivated and if you focus on it. So we got to talk about customer acquisition. I've talked about this in prior webinars and all my workshops is the Microsoft Community Connections, where you do the lunch and learn at your local Chamber of Commerce or Rotary Club or Business Club, and collect leads and go through what I would call an Eloqua sales motion or a basic CRM function of following up with the lead with a phone call, an email, perhaps a postcard. So get to know Microsoft Community Connections. You can sell by fear. So if you want to capitalize on Heartbleed, it's one way to do it. I mean, how do we sell home alarm systems, right? It's one way to do it. So this is up on NeoWin. This is an article up on NeoWin that you're welcome to go poke around and find. But thousands of websites are hosted by Windows XP, but 500,000 use Windows 2000. So if you want to go fear-based, that's one way to do it, and that pillar exists. And then here's a Seattle MSP that I clicked through. On the right is their ad up on Facebook. And so it showed up because I have had posts that have the word XP. Of course, their advertisement showed up right column. I clicked through, and they're capitalizing on the past deadline. So my compliments to Revonex out of Seattle. I actually don't know this company, but my compliments that they're doing some social media advertising that's not only geographic specific, that's a key point, but also context specific. So that's pretty darn cool. With that said, I promised you a little bit shorter webinar. You know what? I didn't keep my promise because we're popping up on an hour. Thomas, do you want to take a few moments to maybe share additional wisdom and insights, and then we'll call it a day, sir, on XP migrations?
Well, thanks, Harry. I think it was well-rounded. It's very clear that business users have to come off XP. They can't wait any longer, and I think there is not that much business, perhaps, with some of the banks who want to hold out a little bit longer. But the main thing is that there are automated tools like PC Mover. Unfortunately, there really aren't, because PC Mover is the only tool with the breadth of a service that can be used. And we're happy to work with all channel partners to give them a great advantage of going after more business to move, and also to be very flexible in their approach. I think you mentioned Windows XP might not be the only system in the enterprise or in the business. There might be also some Windows 7 machines or some Vista machines that need to be migrated. PC Mover can do that all. Even if you want to upgrade an existing XP machine that is not that old and is still powerful enough, you can upgrade to Windows 8 and still preserve application data and settings on that machine, a service that Microsoft has never been able to do. So PC Mover is pretty powerful. We're very happy to be right now in this momentum. And if any of the channel partners want to work with us, they can register as online resellers and get a great pricing, and can do that directly online so that they don't waste any time going through distribution channels or whatever.
Okay, well, appreciate you hopping on the webinar. Folks, we wanted to make sure that we consistently deliver a Thursday morning webinar, a weekly webinar, and have content that's spot on. Next week is Carl Palachek, a well-respected industry MSP guru. So he'll be our guest next week. And then, again, before you know it, I'll make sure that we kind of start having a conversation about 365. I'll get Robert Crane, an MVP out of Australia, to jump on and work with us about Office 365, and we'll talk about a slightly different migration tool for the Exchange email store in the public folders called Skykick. With that said, we are basically approaching time. Let me see if we have any questions. Hang on, I've been pretty focused on the Heather, do we have any questions coming in on chat that you want to forward to me? We have a couple minutes. I could take a couple questions. And it may be, folks, I can totally appreciate that that I didn't make mention, as I do every week, that you use the chat feature. Is there anybody who can help me if I get in my head? I could pay. Yeah, go ahead and contact me offline. This is a question from one of the listeners who wants to pursue the opportunity. Very interesting question. So is there anybody that can help me if I get in over my head? I can pay. Well, I like the last part, but here's what we've done. We set up a labor market with xpmigrations.com, and we've had that up for darn near a year. And you know who a significant part of our customer base is fellow SMB Nation members or SBSers or channel partners. And the idea here is that you take on a gig and you want to use contingent or contract labor to supplement the gig for either expertise or for scalability. And that's what we do very, very well. So we built a labor market. Contact me offline, CERD extension 103, and I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about that. But that's actually a really good question. And there was one person, boy, I'll tell you, there was one person in London that has built his entire practice this way. So he's an IT pro, and he only uses contingent staffing and contract labor to do the work through a different labor market. And that's how he can look larger than life and scale very quickly. Folks, I'll tell you, any other questions? Let me make sure I get the chat panel disconnected. My apologies for not reminding you to use the chat feature. We'll give it a last call for questions. Otherwise, thank you very much. And with that said, folks, we'll see you next Thursday. Have a great day. Thomas and the group over at LapLink and PC Mover, thank you so much. Thomas, I don't know about you, but it's sunny over here on Bainbridge Island. I think I'm going to go for a walk.
It is great here, and I think we are busy with customers. So, no, but have a great walk. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the cooperation.
All right. Thank you very much. Folks, have a fantastic day. We'll see you next week.